Do you want to be the envy of all tanks? In that case, let me teach you how to quickly pick up Vengeance Demon Hunter in raids, dungeons and delves, so you can start smashing and looting in no time with the best tank in the game. In this season, both Fel-Scarred and Aldrachi Reaver are really good for Vengeance, and you can actually play both. In dungeons, use Aldrachi with this build. This is currently the stated most defensive build you can play. We all know that M+ can be very chaotic and you never know what can happen. Having a lot of self-sustain and damage reduction through consuming a lot of souls works really well with Aldrachi, since the hero talent plays off of you munching souls all day and night like you're Dementius versus an RP guild on LFR. Speaking of, in raids, use Fel-Scarred with these talents. Raid tends to be a bit more forgiving, but that doesn't mean you can slack off. It does mean you can afford to do a bit more damage, and Fel-Scarred makes that really fun to do. If you want to take it chill and blast some delves, Fel-Scarred works really well there as well. The build gives you everything you need to smack that delver journey, and if you like it, you can even take this build into dungeons when you're done. All of these builds are linked in the description, so you can just grab them and import them into your game. Additionally, you'll also find Itamae's guide on Wowhead for Vengeance with a lot more in-depth explanation, as well as triple the amount of builds for you to try, should you want to dive deeper into the spec. It can be scary sometimes to tank if you are new, especially hopping into one like Vengeance that may not be as intuitive as something like Warrior. Doing videos like these where we try our best to make everything easily digestible has been a project supported by our Patreons, since we kind of gave up on guides for a few years. Not only that, but being a part of our Patreon team makes it so we can do more cool videos like this in the future. The link is in the description, patreon.com/Marcelian&Flame, and if you do end up there, you might find more cool stuff we prepared especially for you. Now let's break down Vengeance really quick and easy, so you won't waste too much time watching this video and not actually playing. You have two main resources that enable you to do damage and also survive taking a lot of damage. Fury is your simple bar you build with abilities like Fracture and spend it with Soul Cleave. When you find yourself taking damage, you want to use Demon Spikes as your active mitigation. This increases your armor and gives you a chance to parry melee attacks, the biggest source of damage intake you have to deal with. On top of this, you have another resource called Soul Fragments. Whenever you use Fracture, a Sigil, or Chaos Nova, you break the souls of your enemies into bits. If you step over them, you collect them and heal for each one. Soul Cleave also automatically collects 2 of them whenever you use the ability, but in our Fel-Scarred builds, you can use Spirit Bomb that eats 5 at once, explodes in AoE damage, and heals you for quite a bit. These souls have a lot of talents that work when you collect them, one important one being Pain Bringer, which gives you a stack of 1% damage reduction per talent point invested per soul consumed for 6 seconds. So the more and faster souls you generate and consume, the tankier you get. Not to mention there are other things that factor in, but suffice to say, make souls, eat souls, you good tank. When you start combat on Fel-Scarred, you want to pre-cast Sigil of Flame, Infernal Strike into the boss or pack, pop Immolation Aura, Fracture to get souls and Fury, Fiery Brand next, use the Hunt and Soul Carver, Fel Devastation next, Fel Blade after to get you ready for Demon Surging consumption, Spirit Burst if you have 4 or more souls ready, Soul Sunder otherwise, pop your second charge of Sigil of Flame so you can Metamorphosis. Past this, you will simply follow a priority list of abilities while remembering you are not actually a DPS. You still need to survive, so never neglect your Demon Spikes, Darkness. Even use Metamorphosis defensively regardless of the best conditions to maximize its damage. But if you have your survivability in check, to dish out the most amount of damage possible, you want to keep Infernal Strike and the Hunt on cooldown as much as possible. The next most important thing is to play your Demon Surges properly as a Fel-Scarred. Whenever you go into your demon form, your spells become empowered, and when used for the first time, they explode in damage around you. Fel Devastation or Demonic gives you a minor version of this where only your Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb get upgraded to Soul Sunder and Spirit Burst. But when you press Metamorphosis, Fel Devastation also becomes Fel Desolation. Sigil of Flame becomes Sigil of Doom. Immolation Aura turns into Consuming Fire. And you will still have Spirit Burst instead of Spirit Bomb and Soul Sunder instead of Soul Cleave. The order I mentioned them in is also the order in which you would want to press them as far as importance goes. Note that their cooldown also gets reset when you press your meta, which is why in the opener we went through the trouble of putting them all on cooldown before going into our Metamorphosis. Once you have consumed your Demon Surges, make sure you put Sigil of Doom on cooldown, Immolation Aura on cooldown, and if meta dropped and you still have charges of Sigil of Flame, use them to debuff the enemy. Cast Soul Carver next as far as importance goes. Use Fracture as often as possible, and if all of the above are done and you still are in demon form, use Soul Sunder. If you are over 50 Fury, pop your Fel Devastation. And as mentioned before, only use Metamorphosis if Fel Devastation and Sigil of Flame are on cooldown, since these will be reset. Immolation Aura will not though. Felblade to keep your Fury levels up, Fracture as much as possible, Soul Cleave to spend Fury, and throw Glaive as a filler. For Aldrachi Reaver, the opener starts with Sigil of Flame again into Immolation Aura and the Hunt. Use Reaver's Glaive into Fracture and Soul Cleave. Fiery Brand next, Sigil of Spite after, Fel Devastation, pop meta and your second Sigil of Flame. Use Fracture as long as you won't cap Souls or Fury, use Soul Cleave to dump Fury. Once you are done with all of this, the same rules apply with a priority list for your abilities, only that Aldrachi tends to be a bit more complex. The main idea of Aldrachi Reaver is that your Reaver's Glaive will empower your Soul Cleave and Fracture to increase the damage you do, and the order you press them in once you throw your Reaver's Glaive matters because the second ability in the combo will be empowered further. So if you're fighting a pack of mobs, you want to use Fracture first and then Soul Cleave to make Soul Cleave, the AoE ability, hit harder in AoE. Makes sense, right? Then vice versa on single target. Additionally, your Fracture will apply the Reverse Mark debuff on your target regardless of the order of your abilities. This mark makes the target take more damage than the rest and even more priority damage thanks to the Wounded Quarry hero talent. You never want to waste Reaver's Glaives and the empowered abilities it gives, and you never want to cap abilities that generate souls, since that ends up with you casting fewer Reaver's Glaives. With that in mind, a simple priority to follow is to keep Infernal Strike from capping on charges, make sure all of the Reaver Glaive discussion we had applies, then have Immolation Aura on cooldown, Sigil of Flame to debuff your enemies since illuminated sigils will be key in helping you survive. Don't keep Sigil of Spite on cooldown either. Considering it generates a lot of soul fragments for your Reaver's Glaive, it's very important to press as often as possible. Fel Devastation should always be cast if you have at least 50 Fury, same as before, and use Fracture and Soul Cleave appropriately without capping their respective resources. Fel Blade and Throw Glaive will be fillers. I didn't focus too much on your meta casts since it doesn't really increase your DPS output the same way it does for Fel-Scarred, and Fiery Brand should be used defensively as you get comfortable with the spec, and maybe only after think about debuffing your enemies to increase the fire damage that they take. But there is more to get into Vengeance, and you can catch me stream it at twitch.tv/Marcelian&Flame, among other specs, doing dungeons and raids with viewers. Outside understanding your hero talents, which we can dive so much deeper into, there are a few tips I would recommend Vengeance Demon Hunters follow, tips that I wish I had before dying 2 seconds into a pack or losing aggro. First is to never start a combat without a defensive on you. Vengeance is very squishy out of the box, and your tankiness ramps up in combat, meaning that at the start you will be squishy and can get killed very quickly. Having demon spikes while engaging is almost a must and sometimes not even enough. Meta, Fiery Brand, and Fel Devastation are all great for dealing damage, but they won't help you if you die before you get to their turn in the rotation. Don't be too stingy with them. Pop a defensive if you see you take way more damage than normal. Also, most of these defensives will be useless if you leap over a pack. While you are in mid-air, above a pack, you cannot really parry them properly, and some of the enemies might also be behind you during your animation, hitting you in the back. Back hits cannot be parried or dodged, and they usually kill all tanks, so always leap next to the pack or into it so long as you don't have enemies behind you when you land. A good way to gather mobs in Mythic Plus without losing aggro or dying for the reasons just mentioned is to use range abilities to do so. Throw Glaive, Sigil, and Fel Devastation are good examples. It's ideal to pull enemies at range, and as they walk towards you or your party, you Fel Devastation or other AoE abilities, having them literally walk into your AoE threat building abilities. And lastly, I see a lot of tanks not understanding how AoE Silence should be used for maximum effect. Your Sigil of Silence locks the casting of your enemies down if it interrupts it. It's not enough to just hit the enemies with it. You want it to hit just as they are casting a spell to get a few more seconds of silence down, preventing at least one more round of casts. And the way to ensure this is to not start the pool with it unless it's just like one caster so far away that you physically cannot get to it to interrupt it yourself. What you want to do is gather all of the enemies, and as they start casting, use something like Chaos Nova. This will not silence them or lock them down from casting, it will simply just do a quick interrupt. But what it does is to sync all of their casts together. Once they come out of your stun, all of the casters will start casting at the same time, making your following Sigil of Silence interrupt all or most of them at the same time. By the time they come out of the silence, yours and your party's kicks will be ready again. As a tank, you always want to get eye level as your #1 criteria for gearing. Secondary stats are nice, but stamina is more important for you than any other class, and main stat also has a bunch of defensive properties on top of just making you do more damage. Past this, go for haste and critical strike. Stats usually good for tanks, since haste lowers the cooldown of some of your basic abilities and mitigations, and crit increases your parry chance. Versatility and mastery will be last on their list, but never really useless, so remember that. I wouldn't recommend simming tanks, since simming your damage does not take into consideration you actually surviving. The Fel-Scarred tier set gives you more immolation and soul cleave damage on the 2-set bonus, which doesn't change what you do so long as you play your rotation right. The 4-set bonus is the same, where going into your demon form makes you do more damage. Outside you deliberately pressing Fel Devastation, which you want to do on cooldown, same with meta, there is no real decision you need to make to exploit the benefits of this tier set. Aldrachi is the same. Your 2-set just makes Reaver's Glaive deal more damage. The 4-set further exacerbates your Aldrachi dance, where your Soul Cleave does way more damage when empowered, and your Reaver's Mark applied by your Fracture can stack to 3, as opposed to 2 without the tier set bonus, and makes Fracture hit even stronger when cast after Soul Cleave. Literally, you don't have to think too much about it as long as you play your rotation properly. But that doesn't mean Vengeance doesn't have more under the hood. We opted to keep it as simple as possible so you can start playing it right away, but all of our info has been taken from Itamai's guide on Wowhead, which we recommend you read to get more knowledge on the spec if you want to push high-end content, link is down below, and also check the Felhammer Discord where the Demon Hunters hang around and wait for the Devourer spec. What is that, you ask? Well, it's the 3rd Demon Hunter spec announced at Gamescom, for which we already made a video right here in case you missed all the good stuff coming in midnight.